He's not gay. He has a wife and children, but that's not enough to tell the truth about a person. Every star has a story. Secrets behind the halo. This video reveals the secrets of love, the hurts, and the journey of daring to be true to yourself. If you ever believe that fame is happiness, watch to understand. Behind the halo, everyone is just human. And sometimes what we see with our own eyes is not necessarily the truth. For more than half a century, Elton John has been the very definition of a living legend, a name engraved in gold across the history of British music. The man behind the oversized glasses, feathered costumes, and piano anthems that shaped entire generations. His concerts felt almost like spiritual awakenings, lights, sequins, and a sound that could lift you out of your body. To millions, Elton was invincible, untouchable, larger than life. But fame, as dazzling as it looks, has a way of hiding shadows. Behind the flashbulbs and standing ovations lived a man haunted by fear. The fear of being truly seen, of being himself in a world that wasn't ready for the truth. And that fear, it ate away at him slowly, quietly, for years. By the mid-1980s, the pressure had become unbearable. Every headline whispered about his personal life. Every question cut a little deeper. And so, in 1984, Elton made a choice that would alter the course of his life. He got married to a woman. Her name was Renate Blauwel, a gifted sound engineer who worked closely with him on tour. What began as an attempt to silence the rumors became one of the most painful chapters of his story. The wedding was extravagant, lavish, the perfect spectacle for the cameras. But behind closed doors, the silence was deafening. He wanted to feel normal, to believe that love could fix everything. But deep down, Elton knew he was building a life on borrowed emotions, living a script written to please everyone but himself. 4 years later, the illusion shattered. The marriage ended in divorce, leaving both of them broken in different ways. Renate later described the experience as devastating, saying she felt used, as if she had been cast in a film without her consent. She vanished from the spotlight, her name buried under decades of silence, like a ghost erased from pop history. Yet, secrets never stay buried forever. When Rocket Man, the biopic about Elton's life, premiered decades later, the past came roaring back. Old wounds reopened. Feeling exposed, Renate took Elton to court, seeking compensation for the pain the film revived. It wasn't just about money, it was about closure, about recognition, about truth. The lawsuit became a brutal reminder that even legends aren't immune to the echoes of their past. Today, Elton John stands tall, unmasked, and unapologetic. He's married to his longtime partner, David Furnish, a proud father and a symbol of authenticity for millions. He speaks openly about his struggles with identity, addiction, and self-acceptance, turning his pain into something universal, a lesson in self-love. But still, the shadow of that 1984 wedding lingers in the collective memory, a symbol of what it once meant to be famous in a world that punished honesty. That marriage wasn't a fairy tale. It was a wound wrapped in shiny paper, a desperate attempt to silence the noise, and proof that even the brightest stars can burn behind closed doors. Elton has said it many times since. Before I could love anyone else, I had to learn to love myself. And perhaps that was the hardest performance of his life. Not under the spotlight, but alone, at the piano, learning how to play the song of his own truth. He didn't just sing. He exploded onto every stage he touched. Freddie Mercury, the man who redefined what it meant to be a rock star. That voice could shake stadiums. That energy burned brighter than any spotlight. He was wild, magnetic, impossible to ignore. But here's what most people forget. Behind the chaos of fame, behind the glitter and the madness, was a love story that didn't fit into any label. A story that would haunt him and define him forever. Her name was Mary Austin. They met in 1970, back when Queen was just a dream, and Freddie was still a young man searching for himself. There was no fame, no fortune, just raw talent and a spark that couldn't be contained. Mary saw it first. She didn't fall for the rock star because there wasn't one yet. She fell for Freddie Bulsara, the boy before the legend, and maybe that's why he loved her so deeply. She grounded him. She was calm where he was chaos, real where he was spectacle. Soon he proposed. She said yes. The wedding never happened, but the promise was real. For a while, they looked like the perfect couple, until the whispers began. Mary suspected he was seeing someone else, and she was right, but not in the way she thought. One night, during an argument that tore down every wall between them, Freddie confessed. "There are no other women," he said. "There are men." Can you imagine hearing that from the person you love? The ground must have disappeared beneath her. Their romance ended that night, but something extraordinary survived. From the ashes of heartbreak came something stronger, a bond that transcended love itself. Mary became his confidant, his safe place, his forever person. He even bought her an apartment just above his own so she would never be too far away. And she never was. When fame devoured him, she kept him human. When the illness came, she was the first to know. Before the band, before the press, it was Mary. Because he knew she wouldn't judge him. She'd stay. And she did. Think about that. Would you stay? Through the silence, through the pain, through the sound of a man slowly fading while the world kept singing his songs, Mary was there. When Freddie wrote his will, he made it clear. His heart still belonged to her. He left her almost everything. His 28-room mansion, his fortune, even his beloved cats. More than his final partner, Jim Hutton, Freddie trusted Mary with his legacy. He once said, "She's my common-law wife. To me, it was a marriage. We believe in each other. That's enough." And maybe that's what it really was. Enough. On November 24, 1991, the world lost a legend. But Mary Austin lost something far greater, the only man who ever truly saw her, and the proof that love doesn't need labels to be real. If you've ever loved someone you couldn't keep, you understand what Freddie felt. And if you believe that kind of love never really dies, maybe you felt it too. Freddie Mercury broke every rule in music, and every rule in love. He lived loudly, he loved fearlessly, and he left behind a story that whispers one eternal truth. Sometimes, the greatest romances aren't the ones that fit the mold. They're the ones that rewrite it. Ricky Martin, the man who made the whole planet dance to Livin' La Vida Loca. A Latin idol turned global phenomenon. For years, he was the perfect leading man, a sex symbol who made millions of women sigh. Every move, every smile, perfectly choreographed. But while his songs ruled the charts, his heart was living a story straight out of a secret script. His long and complicated romance with Mexican TV host Rebecca de Alba. They were the golden couple. Every interview, every magazine cover showed the same picture. Two dazzling smiles, a love that looked unbreakable. And whenever the press asked the inevitable question, the answer was always the same: the wedding is coming soon. That soon became a mantra. It stretched on for years, the perfect distraction from the real question. Was the romance real at all? Behind the cameras, a very different story was whispered. Some said it wasn't love, but a pact. Ricky, the rising international star, had everything to lose if he revealed his truth. In that era, admitting he was gay could have destroyed his image overnight. And Rebecca, according to gossip, wasn't exactly chasing a traditional marriage herself. So together, they built something that looked like love, but functioned like a fortress. A beautiful illusion to keep the world guessing. A romance made for the media, but empty of the passion everyone swore they saw. And then the curtain fell. Ricky fell in love, not with another woman, but with a man named Eduardo Verastegui. The scandal erupted when actress Araceli Arambula, Eduardo's girlfriend at the time, accused Ricky of stealing her man. That confession hit the tabloids like dynamite. In one headline, the illusion shattered. The story of Ricky and Rebecca, once sold as the wedding of the century, collapsed into what it truly was, a staged performance. Years later, Ricky would find the courage to live without masks. He came out publicly, built a family with his husband, and spoke openly about the years he spent hiding behind the perfect smile. He said he had to protect himself because the world wasn't ready for his truth. But the memory of his relationship with Rebecca de Alba remains an uncomfortable reminder of what fame demanded back then. To survive, you had to lie beautifully. It was a relationship that lasted almost as long as a telenovela, full of rumors, pacts, and explosive revelations. And in the end, the conclusion was as clear as it was painful. What the world believed to be an unforgettable love story was, in reality, a stage built to fool the audience. Because sometimes, the most convincing show doesn't happen under the spotlight. It happens in the private lives of those who swear they're living la vida loca. Miguel Bosé, always surrounded by mystery, by controversy, by that strange aura that mixes brilliance with scandal. The son of a bullfighter and a film actress, he seemed destined for the spotlight from birth. And he got there. A daring, chameleonic artist who built an international career and reinvented himself again and again. But there was something Miguel could never escape. The whispers. The questions that had followed him from the very beginning about his loves, his choices, his silence. In the backstage corridors of show business, a story was told over and over again. They said that in an attempt to quiet the rumors, Miguel once proposed to Mexican singer Daniela Romo. It wasn't romance, it was strategy. A marriage of convenience to protect them both. Because they said, Miguel wanted to cover his orientation, and Daniela, well, she wasn't exactly looking for a husband either. It was the perfect deal. Stand together in public, live freely in private. But the plan never reached the altar. Daniela fell in love with a woman, Tina Galindo, and Miguel kept walking his own road. That road led him to Ignacio Palau, his partner for nearly 30 years. Together, they built a modern family. 4 children born through surrogacy, 2 from Miguel, 2 from Ignacio. For years, they seemed solid, a quiet, elegant fortress, until 2018 when everything collapsed. The breakup wasn't private. It became a public war, a legal battle over custody and money that exposed what many had long suspected. Behind the image of the mysterious artist was a man who had loved deeply, but also lived under contracts, compromises, and secrets. And then another name surfaced. Ricky Martin. It was said that he had advised Miguel and Ignacio on how to have children through surrogacy. What started as a shared dream turned into a nightmare. After the split, each man kept his own children, as if a family could be divided evenly down the middle. Ignacio sued Miguel, demanding support not only for his biological kids, but for all 4, because they had grown up together, under the same roof as brothers. The fight tore away the last layer of mystery around Miguel Bosé's private life. It revealed what few dared to say out loud, that his life had always been a roller coaster between discretion and scandal. On stage, he looked untouchable, in control, confident, free. But behind that calm surface were storms of passion, silence, and legal battles that could rival any Mexican soap opera. Because if there's one word that defines Miguel Bosé, it's paradox. A man who sang about freedom, but whose heart lived inside invisible walls, shaped by pacts, secrets, and storms that ended up shouting louder than any of his songs. Juan Gabriel, El Divo de Juarez, a genius who turned pain into music, and a performer who conquered the world with a voice that could break hearts and gestures no one dared imitate. In the 1970s, as his songs began to fill theaters and radio waves, Juan Gabriel faced something far tougher than any critic: the persecution of his own image. Mexico's so-called League of Decency pressured TV host Raúl Velasco not to feature him on Siempre en Domingo. His movements, his flamboyant style, his softness, everything about him was seen as a threat to the country's idea of family television. And so, surrounded by whispers about his sexuality, Juan Gabriel realized he needed protection. A story to sell, a facade to hide behind. That's when the rumors of his girlfriends began. First came actress Meche Carreno. They filmed 2 movies together, and soon the press crowned her Juan Gabriel's girlfriend. Then came singer Ida Cuevas, with tales of a proposal and even plans for a child. But none of those stories ever came true. They stayed frozen in magazines, perfect smiles, perfect lies. Behind the cameras, the reality was more complex. Some claimed Juan Gabriel had biological children with women, others swore he was entirely gay. But what everyone agreed on was that he lived trapped between 2 worlds, the one that adored him and the one that would never fully accept him. He played the game for years, carefully, gracefully, sometimes hinting, sometimes denying, but never confirming. Because for an artist like him, one truth could destroy everything he'd built. Unlike other stars, his paper marriages never materialized. The divo never found a woman willing to be his public shield. And maybe that was his greatest contradiction. A man who sang of love with total surrender, but could never love freely in the eyes of the world. Still, Juan Gabriel never stopped giving love. To his fans, to his music, to the people who saw beyond appearances. When he walked onto a stage, he wasn't hiding anymore. He was home. Every gesture, every lyric was his way of saying what he could never say in interviews. His truth lived in his songs. Time, however, has a way of healing what people could not. When Juan Gabriel passed away in 2016, the world mourned not just a musician, but a man who dared to be himself, even if he could only do it through melody. He left behind one of the richest legacies in Latin American music, a voice that still echoes across generations. Yet his private life remains wrapped in the same mystery that haunted him from the start. Who did he really love? No one knows for sure. Maybe he loved many, maybe he loved in silence, or maybe his truest love was always the stage itself, the only place where he could be everything he was. Because even without a wife on paper, Juan Gabriel achieved what few ever do: to be eternal, to be legend, to be immortal. When Shakira sang "Hips Don't Lie," the whole world moved to her rhythm. She wasn't just a pop star, she was a force of nature. And her love story with Gerard Piqué looked like something out of a fairy tale. The global superstar and the Barcelona footballer, young, beautiful, powerful, with 2 children and a life the world envied. To the cameras, they were perfect. Behind them, the story was far darker than anyone imagined. First came the whispers of infidelity. Then came the confirmation. Piqué had a new love, a young woman named Clara Chia. At first, it seemed like a classic celebrity breakup: betrayal, heartbreak, paparazzi. But soon, things took a bizarre turn. A viral storm hit the internet, a theory as shocking as it was impossible to verify. What if Clara wasn't a woman at all, but a man who had transitioned, allegedly with Piqué's help? According to those online rumors, Gerard had quietly financed operations, surgeries, and aesthetic changes to protect the secret. And just when people thought it couldn't get stranger, photos began to surface, images of Piqué being affectionate with another man. Were they real? Were they fake? No one knew for sure. But the idea alone was enough to set the internet on fire. Within days, hashtags trended worldwide. Memes, reactions, breakdown videos, Every corner of social media turned into a courtroom. Everyone had an opinion, and Shakira, once a symbol of joy, became the center of a global heartbreak. Her silence spoke louder than any statement. For Shakira, it wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about humiliation. A public heartbreak watched by the entire world. The dream she had built crumbled in front of millions of eyes. What once looked like love suddenly felt like performance. And yet, from the wreckage, she rose. With a broken heart and her head held high, Shakira did what only true artists can do. She turned pain into power. Every lyric became a weapon, every beat a declaration. Her revenge wasn't shouted in interviews, but sung on global charts. Each new song, Te Felicito, Monotonia, BZRP Session 53, felt like a page ripped straight from her diary, and the world couldn't stop listening. The woman who once sang about love was now rewriting the language of heartbreak. Her voice carried fury, pride, and resilience, all wrapped in rhythm. And while the tabloids kept digging for answers, the fans had already chosen their side. Team Shakira. The world danced, again. This time, to her heartbreak. And as her songs climbed to number one question lingered in the air, echoing louder than any chorus. Was Piqué hiding a forbidden love while Shakira looked him straight in the eyes? Or maybe the real secret wasn't his. Maybe it was hers. The secret of how to turn betrayal into an anthem the world will never forget. In the 1990s, they were Hollywood royalty. You remember this, right? Demi Moore, the most desired actress of her time. Bruce Willis, the action hero who could save the world with a smirk. Together, they were golden. 3 daughters, red carpets, a love story that seemed untouchable. They weren't just a couple. They were the American dream. But tell me, have you ever noticed how, in every perfect Hollywood story, there's always that one twist waiting off screen? Behind the smiles and premieres, the cracks began to show. The passion faded, the distance grew, and eventually, the fairy tale fell apart. At first, it looked like just another celebrity breakup, a headline, a statement, a goodbye. But then came the part no one expected. After years of high-profile romances, Demi Moore did something that made the whole world stop scrolling. She was suddenly linked to Masha Mandzuka, a Serbian stylist and entrepreneur. At first, the tabloids called them close friends, but those who knew them whispered something else, that theirs was a quiet, deeply personal bond, a connection that didn't need to shout to be real. Now, pause for a second. What would you call that? Friendship? Love? Maybe something that doesn't need a label at all. For some, it was just Demi evolving, a woman unafraid to follow her heart, no matter where it led. For others, it was Hollywood's most glamorous rebel breaking yet another invisible rule. The woman who once stood beside 2 of the most desired men in the world had now found happiness in the arms of a woman. The news exploded across entertainment media. The goddess of Ghost and G.I. Jane, the woman who embodied strength and control, had once again rewritten her story. Not for the cameras, but for herself. It wasn't scandal. It was evolution. It wasn't about shock. It was about truth. And honestly, if you followed Demi Moore long enough, you probably weren't surprised. She's always been ahead of her time. The first actress to challenge Hollywood's beauty standards. The first to fight for equal pay. The first to say, I'll age and I'll own it. And now she was daring to love on her own terms too. To some, it was a plot twist. To others, it was the final missing piece. The moment when the woman behind the legend finally made sense. Because if there's one thing Demi Moore has proven, it's that even in the heart of Hollywood, where every story looks perfectly scripted, love remains the most unpredictable story of all. For millions of fans, Carrie Fisher will always be Princess Leia, the fearless rebel who fought empires with nothing but wit, courage, and a laser blaster. But behind the lightsabers and galactic glory, Carrie's real-life love story was messier than any Star Wars script. Her great love was Brian Lord, a powerful Hollywood agent. Together they seemed unstoppable, a dream couple orbiting their own perfect galaxy. They had a daughter, a home filled with laughter, and a romance straight off a magazine cover. Then, suddenly, the script flipped. Out of nowhere, Brian left Carrie for another man. The headlines were explosive, but the real shock came later. Brian claimed that it was Carrie herself who had pushed him to the other side of the Force. As if somehow, loving her had turned him gay. It was a bizarre accusation, one that infuriated some and baffled everyone else. But Carrie Fisher, being Carrie Fisher, didn't crumble. She clapped back with the same sharp humor that had made her beloved. "I guess my Jedi was broken," she said dryly. That was her way. Turn pain into punchlines and heartbreak into humor. The betrayal cut deep, though. Brian didn't just leave Carrie, he left their daughter too to start a new life with his male partner. It was a wound that could have destroyed her. But Carrie refused to let it. Instead, she did what she always did best. She transformed her pain into art, into books, interviews, and unforgettable one-liners. She wrote with brutal honesty about fame, addiction, love, and loss, about being the woman behind the myth. Her wit became her shield, her truth, her weapon. She said once, "Resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die." That was Carrie. Darkly funny, painfully aware, and completely unwilling to play the victim. In an industry built on illusion, she stood for honesty, even when it was ugly. She mocked her own fame, laughed at her failures, and turned every heartbreak into a story worth telling. Through it all, she kept her dignity, even when the tabloids tried to take it away. And while Hollywood kept spinning its stories of perfect love, Carrie Fisher told the one thing the industry hated most: the truth. She turned heartbreak into legacy, humiliation into laughter, and sorrow into connection. Because if Princess Leia fought the Empire on screen, Carrie Fisher fought something even bigger in real life. The expectation that women in Hollywood must always play the part of the rescued. She never needed rescuing. She saved herself, with words sharper than any lightsaber. Even after her death in 2016, the world still quotes her, still laughs with her, still feels that spark of rebellion she left behind. Because Carrie Fisher didn't just play a rebel. She was one in life, in love, and in legacy. And that, perhaps, was her greatest rebellion of all. That laugh. You know the one. Unmistakable, loud, contagious. Fran Drescher didn't just play the nanny, she was the nanny. A whirlwind of humor, heart, and hairspray who turned a sitcom into a global sensation. But behind the high heels and punchlines, Fran's real life was a story worthy of its own TV show. A romantic comedy with a twist no one saw coming. She met Peter Mark Jacobson when she was just 15. They grew up together, dreamed together, and eventually built both a marriage and a career together. He was her partner in every sense, on set, in life, and in love. For years, they were the perfect team. While the nanny made the world laugh, Fran and Peter seemed like the real-life version of happily ever after. But then, the laughter quieted. After more than 2 decades of marriage, they separated. And that's when Peter told Fran a truth he'd been carrying for years. He was gay. Now pause there for a second. Most people would expect drama, heartbreak, maybe even resentment. But that's not Fran. She didn't scream, she didn't collapse. She did what she always did best. She found the humor in the pain. Instead of turning away from Peter, she turned toward him. As a friend, a creative partner, and yes, her gay ex-husband, as she would later call him with a laugh that only Fran could pull off. Rather than closing that chapter, they wrote a new one together. They co-created Happily Divorced, a sitcom inspired by their own story, about a woman whose husband comes out and somehow they remain family. Sound familiar? It should. It was life imitating art, and art laughing right back. Fran used her story not to hide, but to heal, to show that love doesn't have to disappear when romance ends. It can transform, evolve, and even make people smile again. While most exes stopped talking, Fran and Peter built an empire of laughter from the ashes of heartbreak, and maybe that's why audiences still adore her. Because beyond the jokes, beyond the laugh, there's a woman who truly practices what she preaches. That humor is survival, that kindness is strength, and that love in all its forms is still worth celebrating. Today, Fran Drescher and Peter remain inseparable friends, business partners, confidants, and chosen family. They've proven that sometimes the most beautiful relationships are the ones that change shape but never fade. So if you ever wondered whether you can stay friends with the one who broke your heart, Fran's answer would probably come with a grin and that unforgettable laugh. Of course you can. Just make sure it's funny. To the public eye, Wanda Sykes and her husband, producer Dave Hall, looked like the picture of a perfect 90s couple. Years of marriage, stability, success, the kind of life that fits neatly into a family photo. But behind those smiling snapshots, something wasn't right. Wanda couldn't explain it at first, that quiet unease, that growing distance. Even small things started to bother her. The way he chewed, the sound of his voice at dinner. It wasn't anger, it was disconnection. Something deep inside her was out of sync, like her heart was dancing to a rhythm no one else could hear. And then came the revelation. It wasn't apathy, it wasn't boredom, it was truth. A truth that had always been there, waiting for her to stop pretending not to hear it. Wanda realized her heart didn't belong to Dave. It belonged to someone else. And that someone was a woman. Her name was Alex. Now imagine that moment. An African-American comedian in the spotlight, in a country that still wasn't ready to see a gay black woman living her truth publicly. The pressure, the fear, the risk, all of it was real. But Wanda had built a career out of saying the things everyone else was too afraid to say. She'd made people laugh about race, class, politics, even pain. And this time, the punchline was her own life. She walked away from her marriage, not in anger, but in honesty. The tabloids called it a scandal. She called it finally breathing. Her family didn't understand at first. Some friends pulled away. And Hollywood, well, Hollywood can love you on stage and still fear your truth behind the scenes. But Wanda stood her ground. She found love with Alex Needbalski, and together they built something real. A marriage, 2 beautiful children, and a home filled not with pretense, but with laughter and truth. It wasn't easy. There were whispers, there were headlines, there were nights when the weight of judgment felt endless. But through it all, Wanda stayed exactly who she was. Funny, fearless, and unapologetically honest. And if you've ever heard her talk about it, you know she doesn't tell this story like a tragedy. She tells it like a triumph, a comedy with a happy ending. She jokes about it on stage, turning heartbreak into punchlines, pain into power. Because that's what she does best. She takes the truth and makes it something everyone can laugh with, even if they don't live it. Wanda Sykes' story isn't just about sexuality. It's about freedom, about daring to rewrite the script you were told to follow. She once said, "Coming out didn't just save my life, it gave me one." And maybe that's the truth we all need to hear. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that the life you built isn't the one that makes you happy, and then have the courage to start over. Today, Wanda Sykes isn't hiding behind a smile. She's living one. Loud, proud, and completely herself. Still making people laugh, still telling the truth, still proving that joy is the ultimate rebellion. Because in the end, Her story reminds us that family isn't about fitting in. It's about finding where you belong. And sometimes the real happy ending isn't the one that looks perfect. It's the one that feels true. 10 stories, 10 lives, each one proving a simple truth. Behind fame, there's always something the cameras can't see. Some hid it, some fought for it, some paid the price just to live it. Because love never follows the rules. It doesn't care about image or gender. It just is. Messy, brave, real. And this was only part 1. More stories are waiting, some untold, some forgotten. So tell me, which one touched your heart? Stay with us for the next chapter, because the truth behind the spotlight has only just begun.